This is a program that's been long overdue. It's a program about our other family. I got a text message this morning, and she always sends out, from my sister-in-law, she always sends out an inspiration. And this morning's inspiration was, the brain said to the heart, why do you always send out messages for no reason? And the heart said to the brain, you need a reason. I need relationships. And that's what this community has always been about. It's been about a relationship between two cultures that have come together and made a living. Two cultures that a community could not stand one without the other. Two cultures coming together to make one love, which makes a community. And that's what today's program is about. We have Miss Katie Gibbons. She's going to come up and give you a welcome from the Doyle community.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Katie Gibbons, and I am helping oversee the Hope for Health initiative here at the Doyle Center. We are so excited, our team and the community members that are here, we're excited to share this panel discussion with you. Our goal is to continue the efforts of opening up conversation on systemic racism. And beyond that, it's like Clifton said, about building relationship and love. So thank you to everybody who is here, and we hope you enjoy the discussion. I think we have prayer.
Yes.
Please close your eyes and bow your heads in prayer. Heavenly Father, we want to thank you for this event, for all that you have done for the Doyle community, and for all that you will continue to do. We are so grateful to be a part of it. Please bless this panel as they share their experiences growing up in the Doyle community, a place that they call home. We know all good things come from you, Lord. So this day we will give you the glory and the honor. Amen.
Our moderator today, our master of ceremony, is Mr. Joe Castillo. To some of you, is no stranger. Mr. Castillo was born and raised on Shriner Street. He attended Notre Dame High School through the 8th grade. He was Mr. Everything at Notre Dame. He left home, joined the military as a Marine, got married, came back home, worked at Mooney Aircraft. And while he was at Mooney Aircraft, the man told him, you're too smart to be in Kerrville. You need to leave. You need to go somewhere else and find where you need to be. So he did, he left. But before that, he went to DeVry University. He got him a job working on TVs because he thought that was the job of the future. But he found out that he liked also working on machines. So he began working on Xerox machines. And he was promoted after a year and a half to a manager's job. And he ended up being in New York City as vice president of that division of Xerox. Talking about a man who had a dream, who didn't have a dream, but followed the advice of someone else who gave him a dream, and it made a huge difference in his life and his family's life. I give you someone who loves this community, who has lived in this community, and who take ownership of this community. Mr. Joe Castillo.
Wow. Thank you, Clifton. I didn't recognize myself there, but you read it the way I wrote it. Good afternoon, everybody. Again, my name is Joe Castillo, and I also would like to thank you for being here with us today to the Doyle Community Center. It is an honor to have you here with us, and for the people that are not here, you might tell them that the Kerrville, the Kerr-Rankin News will probably have it on TV, and then the city is going to record it also, and they probably will put it on YouTube and Facebook. So for people that are not here, just tell them that they'll be able to see that. First of all, I'm going to repeat a couple of the things that Katie and Clifton said. For some people that may not outside of here that are not here today, they may not know much about what the Doyle Community Center is all about. And so just in a few seconds, I want to tell you what I've learned since I've been here with Clifton from my sister Lala. Where's my sister Lala? Okay. First, I want to tell you about the building. Many years ago, there was a school here. Many years ago. How many minis do I have to?
That's enough.
And that school was Doyle School, and Clifton went here. But one of the things that's happened since then is that this building, I think it's this building here, has been designated as the state of Texas as a historical site. That's how important these facilities are to us and to the City of Kerrville. The Doyle Center is a nonprofit, and of course we've got the various oh my God, I can't even say it, the virus. A lot of things, services they don't have, but what I read about them was that they have services such as youth education, after school child care, mentoring, GED preparation, adults education, adult daycare, and many other services. Unfortunately, they haven't been able to perform all the things. Some of the services are kind of limited. So why are we here? As Clifton said, Doyle has two cultures, and one of them is the African American population, and the other one is a Hispanic culture. And what we're doing today, those two cultures have for many years been working together and to try to make the whole community of Kerrville better. So today we're going to celebrate one of those cultures, which is the Hispanic community. We have some panel people that are going to talk about growing up in Kerrville, interesting things that they're going to tell us. I've heard some of them already. It's going to be good. Our panel consists of Daniel FLORES, Julia Davis, Mary Rodriguez, Fritz Morquecho, Mando Gutierrez, Elia Torres, my other sister, Phil Lozano, and I will be the moderator. And so let's get on with the program. I will be calling each panel member to talk about what it was growing up in Kerrville in the Hispanic community. I have heard things, people that were not from Kerrville told me the other day that they moved to Kerrville because the discrimination in their particular town was horrible for Hispanics. So they found Kerrville as a community they want to move to. So well, we're going to ask them to tell us some special events, some things they remember, some achievements, and some maybe community involvement or things that they've done in their life. You will be amazed. And one of the things as I was researching all these guys and ladies, it was that we're just ordinary people. But when you hear their story, they did extraordinary stuff. And you'll hear some marvelous stories. So we'll start out with Mary Rodriguez, and I'll give you a little bit. Is that okay? Mary was born in Sonora, and that's the one that told me that it was real tough in Sonora when she was young. The schools were not very good, plus the discrimination was very bad. So the dad decided, I think her mother was from Kerrville, so her dad decided to move to Kerrville. And so we were very happy that that family moved here because you'll hear her story and it's amazing. So God blessed us by bringing her from Sonora to Kerrville. When you hear the name in Kerrville, Rodriguez, to me it brings like an awe name. It asks for respect because of the name. In the areas of religion and also in education. In education, there was a school that if you were here many years, you would hear of a school called Marillita. It was a school, at that time the schools didn't have pre-kinder and daycare and all that. So Marillita was opened up to get Hispanic kids or anybody to learn the things they needed to do before they went to public school. It was a tremendous success. No. Where is he? Okay, yeah, he graduated from that school, so he might be talking about it.
He has his diploma.
Huh? Yeah,
He has his diploma.
he has his diploma. And I said the intent was to help people get prepared to be able to go to school. When I went to school, they had a thing because I had a Hispanic name, then obviously I was slow and I needed to go to another room to learn how to speak English. And so at recess, people would go out to play and I'm going to the library to learn how to speak English. And I learned a lot of words from the teacher like won't, and I found out that meant want. Why? So I learned how to speak English and they still have that accent. So, let me introduce you to.
Okay. I want to thank you for all being here. And it's a privilege to be here and speak to you all. Like Joe said, I wasn't born and raised here. I was born and raised in Sonora, Texas. In 1929, I was born. And there was a lot of discrimination there. And my daddy, he came from Mexico, and I don't know where he learned his English, but he believed in education. And he was always looking for better schools for us to go because there was so much discrimination. We were separated on a different school on the other side of the track. And we didn't have good teachers. And we had one room grade where everybody goes to that one room. There was our teacher there. And it was a kind of teacher that she would go to sleep on us. And we could do anything we wanted there in the class. She would sleep. But my daddy, like I said, was always looking for better schools. And we were not allowed to go to the drugstore and have a drink. They would sell us the drink, but we had to get outside to drink it. And we were not allowed to go to the restaurants and sit down on the table and eat there because there was a lot of discrimination among the Mexican people. So my grandmother lived here, and I have some beautiful memories of Kerrville when I was growing up because I spent a lot of time with my grandma. And she lived right there on the corner of Lemos and Water Street, which right now there's a car lot in there. And I remember Mosty was across the street, which is still there, but it was real nice then. And it had a sign of a red horse. And my grandmother would tell us, make up stories about the red horse to us. And the biggest event for us when we were growing up, it was that my aunt would take us to the bridge over there by Pampel. It was a smaller bridge. They can hear you, I'm sorry. And we would get a kick out of going to the bridge and walking there because it had different kind of lights and it made our skin look yellow. And we just thought that was really something, you know, that was really exciting. And there used to be, and that building is still there on Lemon Street. There was a store there, and it was called Zavala. And it was owned by a man, an old man, but his name was Zavala. And he had a little grocery store there across the street from where we lived. And my grandma, if I take a nap, she would give me a nickel. And I could go across the street and buy a big old red dragon soda for a nickel to that little store in Zavala. And that building is still there. It had been moved back, but it's still there. And I remember going to Ramon Castillo's grocery store or general store, which is in the corner of Lemos and Main, where CVS is now. There was Ramon Castillo's grocery store. General store, it had everything in there. And it was just so excited to go in that store and see so many things. I don't know if y'all remember that. And so when my daddy, we moved back, we were in Sonora, but like I said, Daddy was looking for better schools. So we moved to Kerrville right after the war, in World War II. And he bought a little ranch, 15 acres there on Cindy Baker. Then it was on Cindy Baker, it was Fredericksburg Road. There was no buildings there, it was close by the YO, where we had 15 acres. And I went to Tybee High School there. And it was nice to be here, and that's when I met my husband, Matias Rodriguez, which he had just gotten out of World War II, had been a prisoner of war, and he was very popular with the girls. But I don't know why, he says that when he first saw me walking to his daddy's church, he was sitting in the back, and he said he saw me walking for the first time. He told his cousin, "You see that girl? She's going to be my wife someday." So I was his wife for almost 69 years. He just passed in September. But my family, the Rodriguez family, did a lot for the community. And one of the things that my sister-in-law did, Adelaide, well, she got married and her last name was Adelaide DeCune. And what she did for the community was that she had a class in my mother-in-law's house for people that were from Mexico, and she was teaching them how to be American citizens. And so she taught them for a long time, and finally they were able to go to San Antonio, and they all got their citizenship papers. And she helped them all the way through like that. And so that's about all. If there's any questions, I'm fine.
Danny Flores. Let me introduce you, man. Sit down. Danny said, "What's this all about?" when we talked, and I said, "Well, it's about memory we might have of Doyle School or things about the community." And he told me that he had memories of Doyle School because he lived a block away, and a lady by the name of Mrs. Della delivered him at home. And so he was here just a block away from the very day. So he said, from the next morning that I was born, I was into Doyle School. He worked at Quinlan's store. What it used to be called a different name.
Yeah, at one time it was called Pinky Louie's. But then Roscoe Key and Glenn Bradley bought it, and it became Quinlan Cash Food. And,
Let me just finish and you can take it over. And so he worked 22 years there, right? How many?
till the age of 22.
Get up here.
Yeah, I worked there for about 4 or 5 years, something like that. But anyway, it was a ball working there. I had the greatest time because since I was born a block from there, from Quinlan, a block from Doyle, well, all my customers were my friends. So when they came to the meat market, because I was a meat cutter, when they came to the meat market, well, I knew them by name, my first name. So I had a lot of fun with the ladies because, you know, the biggest selling, the steak that was the biggest seller there was chuck steak. And they would ask me, now Danny, is that a tender steak? And I'd say, it just as tender as my heart. And they go, oh no. That's gotta be like chewing on leather, you know. So that didn't work out for me. So I kind of changed it a little bit. They, same ladies or other ladies would come over and, you know, they would always ask me, is that a tender steak? And so I changed it a little bit and I said, just as tender as mother's love. Oh, well, give me 2 of those there. So, but anyway, yes, I was born and raised right there in 116 McFarland Street. And I have really, really good memories from living there because, well, it was a community. We were united. All the kids were united. It didn't matter who you were from, where you were from, or who were your parents, if they had money or didn't have money. We all didn't have money. So we all played ball together, football together, and right there where the wool house is, it used to be where the plumbing business is right now, right there at the wool house. It used to be a bare field, and we used to play football there and baseball, and Doyle football team used to practice there. And of course, after they practiced, it was our turn, to go and imitate what they did, And since I'm talking about football team, I don't know if y'all remember, what was it, Jesse Stokes. Well, Jesse Stokes went to school here, and he graduated from here, I believe. But anyway, he was drafted by the Minnesota Vikings, and he played for Minnesota, and he also played for the Denver Broncos, I believe. And if y'all remember the Toros from San Antonio, he played for the Toros also. Anyway, he was a big star when he came to Quinlan Cash Food. If he went in there to buy a loaf of bread, it would take him 30 minutes to get out of there. 'Cause we all wanted to talk to him and just to be around him, because he was a nice guy. But staying connected to Doyle has been a great pleasure for me. Yeah, I did leave Kerrville for about 32 years, something like that. Came back to Kerrville, and I still live here in the Doyle district. They're right here on Pearl Street. So, in closing, all I want to say is thank you very much for the leadership that all you folks, all these volunteers, like Ms. Lillian, and Ms. Lewis and Coach FIFER. All of these volunteers have done a fantastic job with the Doyle building here, this historical building. So thank you very much, and God bless you.
Thank you. Now this person that I'm going to introduce, I don't know very well. She's she's the oldest sister, excuse me, she's the most beautiful sister, was born in Kerrville. And she attended Starkey in the 1st grade and then went to Notre Dame Catholic School from 2nd to 8th grade. She graduated from Tybee in 1965. She attended Kellogg Business School for a year. She worked at James Avery for 9 years. And then in 1967, she went to work for Tom Daniels. And after 39 years of work at Tom Daniels, she retired. And I'll tell you, you may be surprised about this, sister. After she retired, we went to the retirement, and they actually planted a tree for her with her name and a plaque. Do you have a tree planted for you?
I don't have one.
I don't either. I don't know how she did it. But yeah, she's got a tree planted there, and I went to see it the other day, and it's growing pretty well, pretty darn good. She's married to Jerry Torres. They have been married for 53 years, and I hope we get her to tell stories about that portion of her life. And she had 3 children and 4 grandchildren. So this is my sister, Elia Torres.
Thank you for having me. This is very difficult for me to talk in front of people, but I was born on Schreiner Street, delivered by Dr. Dyer. And so while my mom was in labor, my dad and him were just talking sports and everything while my mom is suffering over there. But finally I came, and I don't know where Joe was. He probably was upset because I took his throne. But growing up...
Still am.
Are you still mad?
Yeah.
Growing up, I went to Starkey School, and my dad was not happy because we were there. We were separated. Julie and I went to school together. They would throw all the Hispanics in a classroom, which we were Mexican Americans at that time. We were not Hispanics. And so they would throw us in a classroom, and all we did was play instruments. And I don't remember ever learning anything there. So my second year, they moved us to Notre Dame Catholic School.
Elliot, sorry.
They moved us to Notre Dame Catholic School, and there we were all mixed. It didn't matter what color you were. And so growing up, we all had a good time there. I think we all were well educated. And then what we learned is that we couldn't go into certain places, like Pampel's. They would not allow us to go in there. And we would always look through the windows to see what people were eating and all that kind of stuff. And then there was a restaurant called Busy Bee, and my dad would pay for Joe and Lala and me to go eat at lunch there. And so every day from the school, which was just across the street, we would go there and we would eat lunch. Well, Lala and I were thrown in the kitchen, but we enjoyed it back there. Well, at least I did. I enjoyed it back there because we would get extra fries and extra drinks and everything, but we didn't realize we were back there because we were Hispanics. We were having a good time, and I think Lala will agree with that. But yet, Joe got to sit at the bar. Now, what's the difference there? So that he was lucky to sit up where all the other people were and that kind of stuff. And so we would, and what I was telling my own kids was that we would go to the movies at 12 midnight. And we would walk from Shriner Street to the Rialto Theater, where is Herring's Printing is now. And for 25 cents, we could buy a Coke, we could buy popcorn, and we could go into the movies. After the movies at 1 o'clock in the morning, we walked back home. Nothing, very safe town. We had no problems here. We were always, I mean, we were raised in this neighborhood. We were among blacks, we were among Hispanics, we were at Carver Park. I mean, we were all over the place. And so if you notice that some of us are lacking a little brain cells, it's because we used to follow the DDT truck that used to spray for mosquitoes. And we would run behind the trucks and the fog and the smoke and everything, and we thought that was fun. And my parents never said different, so we would do it anyway. So, but I graduated in '65 from Tybee, and we were going to have a party. Well, we were all deciding after we graduated that we would go to Kreider's, which is over there in Hunt. Well, they didn't let the blacks in and they didn't let us in, so we had to leave. So that wasn't too long ago. So anyway, being raised in Kerrville, this neighborhood has been a blessing. I love it here. I would move to my mom's house if I could. Thank you.
I was waiting for my sister to tell you, because I went to Notre Dame at the same time they did. I was in the 7th or 8th grade, and they were in the 1st and 2nd, both of them. And I wasn't a very good student. So many times I would misbehave, and we were being taught by nuns. They were bad. But these nuns would take me to sit in her grade at 2nd grade, or my other sisters so I could learn how to behave. And I knew it because they'd get home and the first thing they'd look for Dad and tell him all the things I do, and then I get a whipping. That's why I don't like either one of them. Julia, one of the stories she told me right away when I asked her some of the things she remembered was what I said earlier. I think that she loved to hear the band from Doyle play on Juneteenth. They had a huge celebration. The dancing and the music and the food was one of the things she'd wait for every year to participate in it. I told her, I'm going to say that because that's something I would have never thought about. She retired from the state hospital after 25 years. She started as a nurse, right? Nurse's aide, and ended her career there as a supervisor. But what she told me at the very end of my discussion with her, she said this: my life has always been to help others as a caregiver, to take care of people in need, she said. I've had a good life, Joe, and I am proud of what I accomplished. That's Julia.
Like Elia and them, I was born and raised here in Kerrville on Lawson Street and Monterey Street. That was our barrio. And I was born in my grandmother's house on 313 East Shrine Street, Catalinaville, and she brought me into this world too. And then my mother, during World War II, saved her money and bought the little house where it is right now on Lawson Street. She first bought the lot, and the house that we lived in was moved up here from Webster Street, down there. And the little house is still standing. I still have it, and I'm taking very good care of my mother's house because she saved her little money for this little house for us to have there. It was just a 3 little room house, but we had the best fun in that little house. And I didn't get to go to Mariita school because since I was Catholic, Father Romero went and told Mariita that, went and told our parents that was not a Catholic school. So we couldn't go to the Baptist school. We had to come back to our church. But like I told you, I've always been a caregiver ever since I was a child, going to my Aunt Celia's house to clean her house, which was a small little house, but I had to go and help my Aunt Celia. I had to help somebody there in the neighborhood. And one time, Mr. Medrano was coming from work, and I decided to make coffee for him. Well, it was a kerosene stove, not realizing that I put it too high, and I turned on the stove, and the curtains caught on fire. And my mother got so mad at me. I said, well, Mother, I just wanted for the man to have coffee when he came from work. She says, I don't care, you get back over here. And then when we were going to the Catholic, Our Lady of Guadalupe church, the nuns there would tell us, you know, you have to learn all your prayers, otherwise you're gonna go to hell. Well, me and Elodia, we knew our prayers backwards and forwards, and we didn't want to go to hell, you know, and you have to be baptized. So we made sure that the little kids in the neighborhood got baptized, and there were 3 little girls. They were Baptists, but we got them under the water hole, under the water faucet outside, and we baptized them. And we said, in the name of Jesus, you're baptized. So I don't know what else to say. But I enjoyed coming here to Doyle, and like I told him about coming to the dances, going to Miss Carey's and going to Miss Phelps to take my grandfather, because my grandfather loved to go over there, and to the Pleasure Garden and to all the other places around here, and was raised with a lot of the girls here from the community too. So I don't know what else to say. I'm nervous as it is. But thank you for inviting me so much.
Mando Gutierrez. Mando was born in Kerrville, graduated in 1961 from Tybee High School, attended 2 years of college, worked at Mooney Aircraft for 2 years, and in fact, I worked at Mooney Aircraft at the same time, and him and I commuted to work for most of those 2 years. Started his career with the VA hospital in 1965. And what I've heard of that career is amazing. Mando's first assignment, though, started in the kitchen of the VA hospital. But he had a fantastic career. He retired in 1997. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, 1997, right? After 32 years. And like many of us, returned back to Kerrville. I've known Mando for years. His older brother was a special friend of mine. He is one of those special people that God puts in your life. He is caring, he is kind, he's loyal, he's charming, and he's lovable. Lala. I bet you that's what she did. My goodness, let me put Mando.
My name is Armando Gutierrez, but everybody knows me as Mando. And I was born in and like I said, the pharmacist, I was born on 218 Ratchet's, because I tell them I'm as old as dirt. For the first 6 years of my life, we lived on Limo Street, about right across the street from Moses' garage. When I was 6 years old, Dad built us a home on Shriner Street, a block and a half from Pinky Lewis store. And that's how I became involved with the people here at Doyle. When I was young, I would come over here to play baseball and football because that's where the stars were. Anyway, as just said, I graduated from Tiger in '61. I was lucky enough to go to 1 year at Shriner, and then I got a golf scholarship at Southwest Texas, went for a year and got married. So I went to work at Mooney Aircraft and worked there for about a year and a half, almost 2 years. And I quit because of what was happening. And very difficult to talk about it, but I don't like to talk about discrimination, but it was there. And the reason I quit is because they were hiring high school kids and paying them the same amount of money I was making. I'd been there almost 2 years. And I said, I'm not going to put up with that. So I left with the thought of trying to get a job with the federal government. And I was coming to the post office, and I passed the VA, and I stopped and walked in, and they hired me in the kitchen, making $1.10 an hour. And I'll never forget, the first paycheck I got was like $65. I was married and had 2 kids at the time. So, but it's probably one of the best things I ever did. It changed my life. The VA took care of me. And I guess in 1970, I was selected to go into training in human resources. At that time, they called it personnel. But I want to go back to where we moved to Shriner, and I would come over here and play football and baseball with these guys. They taught me how to play. They really did. And I want to mention some of the names. There was a gentleman by the name of Calvin Mack. And of course, there was Honey and Jackie Boy, Joe Lewis, and of course, the Hardy brothers, and Mr. Hardy and his wife. To me, they were the icons of this community in those days. Jerry Smith, I remember him. He was the first pitcher in Little League that could throw a curveball. I remember that. It was just wonderful. And so when I went to school, got married, went to work, went to the VA, went to training, went to Dallas. I was gone for 20 years. During that period, I went from Dallas to San Diego, to Baltimore, Maryland, to Reno, Nevada, and then 13 years I was in our central office in Washington. And then in 1990, I moved back to Kerrville. And the reason, before I left, when I got selected for the job, I told my parents I'm never coming back. You know, I said, I'm not coming back to Kerrville, you know, because I just was not really happy. And I think we know why. But anyway, my mom cried, and I said, well, I'll come visit, but I'm not moving back. Well, I was so wrong. I came back in 1990 because they were in poor health and they needed help. So I got a job in San Antonio at the VA and worked there till 97. And I've been in Kerrville ever since. And I'm glad I came back because I never saw Kerrville. When I was young, I never saw the beauty of the hill country like I do now. And it's good to be back. It's been a real pleasure. I wish I could have done more, but I did as much as I could. And you know what I did. I want to thank you for having me. I wish I could say more, but I know there's other people to talk. And if there's anything that I can do to help, I'm available, because I am retired. I do work at the golf course, so still, part-time. Thank you very much. And before he gets up, Joe and I, we grew up together. Played football for Notre Dame. I'll never forget, we were all Ultra Boys at Our Lady of Guadalupe. And when Father Kemper told Father Romero we can let Hispanics come to school because they didn't allow minorities at Notre Dame. Father Romero didn't ask us to go. He told us, you're going to go to Notre Dame. And that's where we wound up. And we got a football team. The second year, we went undefeated. And Joe was nominated and received, he was a CYO All-American, which was a big deal. Really proud of him. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I have to say this. I am one that believes that our lives are already planned before we were born. There is a verse in the Bible that says, before you were in your mother's womb, I knew you. And stories like Mando, where he was going through, doing all this, and he says, yeah, I'm not coming back, Mom, but they've come up here. That was already planned for us. Same thing happened in my career. We wanted to go to Albuquerque. We loved Albuquerque. We worked in Dallas, Albuquerque, Denver, Chicago, and New York City. And of all those places, we wanted to go to Albuquerque. And all of this stuff, training that I got while I was going through my job of 32 years, I realized the other day, because I work at the Job Corps. I've been volunteering for 14 years. The first time that I hired on, they gave me a 0 raise, and they've doubled it ever since. So now I have 14 zeros. And I told them the other night while I was talking, and people in the Job Corps are hard people that have had a very, very hard life. I told them that all my 32 years, I never, ever thought that I'd be teaching at the Job Corps. And look how my plan was. And here I am, happier than heck. I don't make any money, but I wouldn't change it for the world. Okay, Fritzo. This is Fritz. Fritz was not born in Kerrville. He was born in Gregory, Texas, right?
Which is now Gregory, Portland.
Okay. But 73 years ago, he did move to Kerrville. And what a blessing that was for us. Not only for the Hispanics, but for the total state of Texas. This guy is something else. And I always say it was our gain and Gregory, Texas loss. In my life, I have heard people say, well, I grew up on country music. I love country music. Or I'm a rhythm and blues person. Man, I love to listen to rhythm and blues. Or I'm a rock and roll guy from the rock and roll area. Well, we as Hispanics were raised with Fritz Morquecho's music. He worked very, very hard to take this gift that God gave him. He studied hard at his music, and to top it off, after so many, many years of doing this, in January of 2016, he was inducted into the Texas Music Hall of Fame. This is Fritz Morquecho. He truly is, to me, and to many people in Kerrville, a living legend and a treasure for us. Play us some music.
To make this story short, I'm going to try to see if I don't run out of oxygen. I'm a little hoarse right now. But talking about Pinky Louie again, I used to live across from Buzzy's now, where that station is, the bus station. They used to have the car boxes. You can call me, what do they call it? The big guy that was in they lived in a train caboose, you know. Yeah. So anyway, I was born in Gregory, but then we lived in Waring. We just on a little trip to Corpus Christi. That's when my mom, you know, decided to bring me, you know. But we lived in Waring, and that's where my dad had his job in the railroad. So when we moved to Kerrville, it was a big step from Warren to Kerrville. Oh, yeah, you know. But right away, me and my dad, and I will always say this to people: if you find an old picture of a little boy, 5 years old, and an old man in his lap with a guitar, that should be me, because that's the way I started playing the guitar. I learned it overnight. My brother was taking lessons, and I was picking them up. You know, by the time he knew that guitar had a people almost like Willie Nelson's guitar, you know. But I really stressed a brand new guitar, and so he just says, "It's yours," you know. So when I played the guitar, you know, when I get to Kerrville, I was lucky to meet Junior Perneda through my dad and his dad. You know, they would get to talking, and he was Breckenridge Junior, because Junior was already a pro by the time I met him. You know, and so he says, "Why don't you let," my dad backed on me a little bit. "Well, my son plays the guitar." He said, "Why don't you bring him over? Let him get together." So we made a little jam band, me and Junior Perneda and Adam Ayala. And so one of the things that we did one time, there was we was having a little jam on Everett Street, where my wife used to live there, and my brother-in-law was with us in the little jam session. And then a guy next door started complaining, because it was Junior and me and my brother-in-law, Ned Mayala, and James Rodriguez. He was a great singer, and so we was all making a lot of noise. This guy didn't like it, so because the biggest instrument that we had was the upright bass, which Adam played the upright bass. And so everybody went outside and just tell me, we're just jamming, we're not hurting nobody, you know. And I a little bit over his head. So we calmed him down. So we went back inside the house, and guess who wasn't there? Adam. I don't know how he got out through a window with this big old bass. Upright bass, and that was one of the little fun that we had later after that, of course. And so, but from the place where we were leaving, there's the wool house on McFarland, and around 3 o'clock in the afternoon or so, I would hear my name. "Okay, Joe, bring the guitar." I go, guitar. So, and I could entertain the guys that were taking a break, so they, you know, they enjoyed. I didn't sing. I don't know what I played. You know, I just played the guitar to hit a few licks there, and they went back to work, back home. And about 6, 7 o'clock in the evening, they would be out. The workers in town, local workers were drinking a few beers, and they came through Pinky Louis, and they hollered at me again, "Get your guitar." So I'd go out there and bring the guitar, and we'd play, and so we had a good time there, because there was all kinds of activities going on with the guys that would come. And we had a special show every now and then. A couple of the guys just had to have a fight. That's what we're, you know, known for. Mexicans like to fight, you know. But even then, you know, they was, you know, get a little punch here and there, you know. And so from there, I was still the guitar player. So, but then around 1949, an uncle of mine came to Kerrville from Bloodberg looking for migrant workers to pick cotton. And So, but then Yuri had an accordion. By then, you know, I was ready for something else, more action. So, when he came in at 4 a.m., we went ahead and unloaded all the car and pulled that accordion because he's got a son my age. And so we went to sit down on the bed and he says, look, I can play this. And he played a few little notes on it. I said, oh, okay. So I looked and looked, listened, and learned, you know, because by 7 o'clock, I knew La Margarita from top to bottom in 3 hours. So, guess who signed up to go pick cotton first? So from then on, the rest is history. The Tejano music, fans of ours, put, I don't know how it happened, but they threw my mind in my name in the pot for the, as a matter of fact, I have my trophy, my award from the Tejano Music Association people, and then in the years as an accordionist, I wound up. We had family in Indiana. We'd go every other year, and one of the cousins decided to open up a restaurant. So I went and so he says, play the accordion, and I want to have a grand opening. We couldn't find any Mexicans to play a guitar, you know, just the accordion. I said, gosh. So the very first time, somebody at the church that they knew how to play guitar. So we wound up doing the grand opening with country music because he didn't know any Mexican songs, you know. So we did country music, and we had the opening of the restaurant, and then I went about three reopenings, because then he remodeled and he called me back again. We had another grand, you know. By then I had a cousin, one of the FLORES guys from Kerrville that moved to Indiana also. He was a guitar player with the FLORES brothers that used to be a man here in Kerrville. And Alfred still has played with me just recently, a couple of years back. So he played the guitar, and so I got another chance to, you know. Well, I wound up the third time that we did the grand opening. They gave me the key to the city of Gas City, Indiana. So from Pinky Louie to the Hall of Fame. So I got my trophy, if y'all would say, you know, my work. We'll pass that around later.
Okay.
Thank you all very much. Hope you enjoyed my little stories.
My first song, all right? And this was in 1949.
I didn't have a chance to meet with him before we had this meeting, so I don't have much of an introduction, so I'm going to let him talk about himself. I know that he went to Maritas, but go ahead and apologize for that.
My name is Felipe Lozano. I was born in 1942, August 4th. I had a short.
Can you put it a little bit closer?
I left when I was 10 years old, but I had great memories. I always remember my hometown, you know, as I was growing up. And I was born, right? And by Francisco Lemos and Water Street. Right in that corner on the right-hand side, there's a little house there, and there was but at that time it was a big house there. And one of my great uncles, Bernardo Reyes, owned that place. And anyway, I was born behind in a little house over there. And then, what I remember is that when I was living in Lawson Street, and like Julia, my cousin, there lived, my mother's two brothers lived in that, and also an uncle lived on Lawson Street. But Lawson Street and Monterrey had a lot of kids there. Our next door neighbor, the Garzas, they were there, the Calderones, the Treviños, they all lived there, and they all had large families, you know, the Laras. And so I always enjoyed playing. You never get tired of playing. When you get mad with one, there was always one kid, you know, like so many kids, you know. But I left when I was 10 years old. But my grandmother used to live right across from Don Castillo's Mary Mansion. She lived there, so I would walk up there on a Saturday, and she would give me 50 cents, and there was a quarter for me and a quarter for Henry, but she would cross me the street on Main Street because there were no lights, so she would cross me there, and then she would leave me there, and then over there by Water Street, right at that corner of Water Street and Pascual, my aunt was there, and Henry Reyes, you know him, Joe, and he was my age, you know, so I would give him the 25 cents, and I go 25, and then my aunt would cross the street, crosses across the street, and we go to Rialto. But before we get there, we would get a little bag. My aunt would give us the bag, a little bag for me and Henry. And right there, before you get to Rialto, there was a big house, it's still there, with a lot of pecans, you know. So we used to pick, the lady says, you can pick all the ones you want on the ground, but don't climb my trees. So we used to go there, you know, and climb and get some pecans, and we would pay like 5 cents to get at the Rialto, and a Coke, a nickel, and we'd eat pecans. And when that movie was over, at that time you could repeat it, because we want to know exactly how Gene Autry pulled his guns and everything, you know. So then we used to go to the Arcadia and pay like 6, 7 cents, you know, and then we have a Coke, you know, and we would stay there and watch it over and over, you know, and then we go home. We walk, like somebody mentioned how safe Kerrville was, you know. But I think it was about 1953, 1954, my parents decided to go to Michigan because my grandfather was going to be going over there. He had been going, and he said because he had a sister over there, and he was going to stay there a year. Well, my mother didn't like that. Somehow, I don't know how, she talked my dad into going. So we ended up staying over there in Monroe, Michigan, you know, right close to Toledo, Ohio. And I never did, you know, because I was only 10 years old, I never noticed this discrimination that was going on in Texas. But in 1960, my uncle he worked for a big construction company in Fort Worth, Texas. And of course, they moved around all over. And he asked me if I wanted to go to work for him. So my wife and I at that time, and my son was 6 months old, we moved to Fort Worth. And that's where I noticed the discrimination. Because my uncle said, well, there were all 6 other guys who were setting up the construction site, you know, putting the shanties, the workshops for each trade, and also all the water jugs and the water fountains. And pretty soon the union came in and told my uncle, he says, I see you've done a good job setting up this place. He said, but where are the blacks? I said, what are you talking about? You gotta have a black for everything that you got here. My uncle said, wait a minute. We were raised in Michigan, you know. They said, we all work alike. One works just as hard as the other one. He said, if you want to open this business here, you gotta do what we tell you. So it was very sad for me, you know. I really felt bad because I knew some of them guys there. So I learned that, I think I was like 21 years old, you know. I learned the discrimination that was going on here. Anyway, after we finished the job there, they want to send me to Utah. And told my wife, and they said, why are we getting away from Texas and Michigan? And our son was gonna start school, so I said, okay. So I said, where do you wanna go? She said, well, she was from Michigan, says, I wanna go to Michigan. So we went to Michigan. And then in 1965, I started with Ford Motor Company, worked with Ford Motor Company. I became an operator of machinery. I became a machine shop operator. And then after about 15 years working on those jobs, they offered me a job to go to Nuevo Laredo because I was a specialist in steel wheels. They're making steel wheels, that's what we done. We made over 24 hours, we made like 35,000 wheels. Because at that time we needed 5 wheels to the car. So we were always working. I never knew what a recession was or nothing because we were always working. So then I went to school there. I had a teacher, I had a couple of teachers, and I went to school there. Got my diploma for high school there, and then I started taking college classes. So then one of my engineers that I used to prototype all the time, they told me, you need to go up there and take some college classes. Because I'm going to recommend you to go to Nuevo Laredo. They're going to open a maquila over there. And because you learn how to speak Spanish, I thought I did. And he said, you need to take a lot of math. He says, and blueprint reading. What I knew that because I always worked with engineering prototyping. So there's where I ended up, you know, in Nuevo Laredo. And I was so excited about coming home, closer to home, you know. But I never realized how hot it was. And I called my sister Argie and I said, Argie, guess what? I'm coming to Texas. Oh, that's great. I said, where are you coming? He says, Laredo. Laredo, that's the armpit of Texas. I said, what? But I didn't realize that until I got, they landed the plane. Of course, they moved me everywhere they moved, and we landed in Laredo. Nuevo Laredo, I'm in Laredo. And they opened, and, you know, you had to, from Hobby Airport, you get in them 32-seaters, you know. And Laredo was small at that time. And they opened the door right at the runway, and you get out. And I was right in front, and they opened that, and that heat hit me up. And my wife said, what did you get me into? So anyway, I worked 7 years there, and then I went back to Monroe, and I couldn't stand the winters anymore, although I had lived there 45 years. So my dad, in 1980, he said, son, you better buy property, you better prepare to come home. I said, well, okay. He said, let's make an investment. So I bought in Pecan Valley in Centerpoint, up in the I live out in the country. And so I realize now what good advice my dad bought. I retired in 98 and came home and built a house there. And I wanted to buy the next 10 acres. To me, they wanted $100,000. But I had only paid $20,000 for the 10 acres. So I am glad that I'm back home. My mother's 97, so I get to spend a lot of time with her, taking care of her, you know. My dad passed away in 85. So I'm really glad to come home and to see a lot of my old friends, like Joe, Fritz, Danny. I used to play with them, all these guys, when we were young. And I really enjoyed being here with you guys. I appreciate what you've done. Thank you very much.
That can close our program for the day. We hope that it was informing, we hope that entertaining, and we hope that you learned some things along the way. You know, community is not about one person, it's not about two people. It's about a lot of people working together with a common goal, with a common interest to make a life. And that's what we've done here. We've been able to forge together, to bring lives together and make a community. Thank you for coming, and thank you for being a part of the Doyle community.